Hi, my name is Elena Lazic. I'm the founder and editor of Animus Magazine, and it's my absolute pleasure to be asked by Klassiki to make my own picks as part of Klassiki Picks. I'm a huge fan of the platform, and actually, I think one or two films from my picks are films that I actually first watched on the platform. So basically, through Klassiki, I've been trying to sort of, like most people, I suppose, to watch more films from Central and Eastern Europe. And the main reason is because it's obviously great cinema, but another reason is because my parents are from the Balkans, and I've been trying to reconnect with that part of my family through film. And yeah, Klassiki is such a godsend for me in that respect. The first film I'm going to talk about is a film I actually saw at a festival the first time, and I don't think it got any release in the UK, definitely didn't actually, but it's wonderful. It's called Christina by Nicolas Bazic. It's a film, it's kind of like a documentary fiction hybrid that follows a transgender woman in Serbia. She's actually Serbian. And for me, this film is absolutely striking, first of all, because of the subject matter. Serbia is not the most welcoming country in general for any type of difference, any kind of minority. And for me, as someone who has some roots there, it was such a beautiful thing to see a film so respectful and so beautiful about someone who's transgender. And it's about this character, it's about her being transgender, and it's about her being a person as well. And that's one quality in this film that I find particularly striking, is it's absolutely not didactic, but it's still such a thoughtful and sensitive and vivid exploration of what being transgender might mean, very specifically for this character, as she has constructed her life in such a way to be able to survive because she was rejected by her parents. And so in this very concrete way, like, how does she live and how does she, sustain herself, but also like psychologically and mentally, how does she relate to the world around her. And the film has such a beautiful kind of hypnotic quality. It's very calm and it's very formally striking, that you kind of get absorbed into what it's doing, into its rhythm. And it's also a hybrid, as I said, of fiction and documentary, and you don't really know when one begins and one ends, but it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day you have this woman who sometimes you can tell she's acting, but even that is beautiful to see. And it is just such a beautiful, thoughtful film that really tries something with form. Kind of the director actually said this, that in interviews, where he was initially trying to make a film at the frontier between documentary and fiction, and only then did he find Christina, the subject of his film. So it kind of the other way around than you would expect. And so yeah, it's just such a beautiful exploration of cinema and transgender cinema all in one. It's absolutely wonderful. The other film I wanted to talk about is actually, in some ways, it kind of reminds me of Christina as well. It kind of has a similar formal rigor and formal imagination and formal creativity and confidence in the way it's made. It's called Safe Place by Juraj Lerotic. This is a more famous film. I mean, if we can even talk about famous films in that context. It's a film that won several awards in many festivals in Europe, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's again, this is a coincidence, I didn't pick this film for this reason, but it's also kind of at the frontier of documentary and fiction, because actually the director of the film, Juraj Lerotic, basically plays himself in the film, and it's a film about what happened to him with his brother, who suffered from, I guess you could say, suffered from mental illness and passed away. And this is him kind of making a film about this, so it's extremely moving. But when I saw it, I did not know it was based on a true story, and I did not know even that the director was acting in the film, that he was basically the main character. And basically throughout the film, you follow 24 hours of this man basically trying to protect his brother from himself. And it's a Croatian film, I should have said, and it's him trying to protect his brother, who's just looks, very, very sad, and he's really struggling. but then also later on their mother joins to help the brother take care of the other brother, of her other son. And it's such a beautiful film, because it's kind of about, you see these people trying to do everything they can, and they're being very practical because they have to be in that situation, but it's kind of through this very limited time frame and these limited interactions. It's a film that takes place, as I said, over 24 hours. You get kind of glimpses of what their relationships between these people were, and it's a very interesting film because it's a critique of the mental health, the healthcare system in Croatia, which is, as in most places, I suppose, not adequate, especially in case of mental illness. So there's that aspect of the film, but again, not didactic at all. It's very naturally done, very believable, very lived in. But there's also an aspect that I think, it's a film that you can really think with it when you watch it. Not to mean that it's slow, it's not so slow, it's not even long, but it really engages you in that way. It doesn't give you anything easily. But it's very pleasurable to watch at the same time. So I interpret this film as well as being kind of a critique as well of the way family deals with people, like, who are depressed, essentially, who have depression or are suffering from some kind of mental illness, and the limits of just, love. It's just not enough to just love someone, and the things that we should do and the things that we don't do and the things that are difficult to do, and also the fact that what is it that we can do in that situation. And it's a film I think about all the time. I've written about it already for Animus, actually, if you're curious. And yeah, I was just completely devastated by it, but also inspired, because it's an incredible thing that Elena Lazic has done to take this personal story, but then also make such a formally and structurally so rigorous and so imaginative film. I don't want to spoil anything, but the way it plays with fiction and reality is so wonderful and so striking. Like, when I was watching the film, I was like, hold on, what is this film doing? In the best way. So it's absolutely gorgeous. Another film I picked is actually a short film. It's called Kidnapping of the Sun and Moon by Sándor Reisenbuchler from Hungary, 1968. And that's a film I discovered quite recently, but it has left such a strong impression on me. It's like a very direct experience. Again, I think most of the films I've picked are very vivid films that very they don't really take place so much in the brain. They're not so much necessarily intellectual. They're kind of, there's always a tactile element, a very immediate element, a very sensorial element, and I would say this film absolutely fits that bill. It's a short film, cartoon, animation, and it's incredible because it's like all these forms, the shapes that are kind of remind you of things, but it's kind of like a child drawing a sun or something, or drawing a flower, and like you can recognize that it's a flower, but it's not like a picture of a flower. And so I guess it's this dimension of naive or folklore art. And apparently it's inspired by Polish paper cutout art that exists, but not just in Poland, I suppose. I think it's kind of in that region in general. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's such bright colors, and basically it tells a story. It's based on a poem from the 50s, I believe. And it tells a story it's like a fairy tale, but actually the director of the short film took out most of the fairy tale elements, like there's no princess and there's no like knight, but he kept a dragon. And so the story is there's harmony in the world. There's no dialogue in the film. There's harmony in the world between man and nature and everything that exists. And then there's a huge dragon that arrives and destroys everything and throws the world into chaos. And eventually, after a lot of destruction, eventually there's one man that rises up, and people manage to come together again and to rebuild the world. And that's like the shortest description I can make of that plot, but it's not really about the plot. You don't watch this film for the plot. It's a very interesting experience watching it because it automatically reminds you of things that either that you personally experienced or that you've read about or that you imagine about. So even though it's a cartoon supposedly for children, though I think a child watching this would probably be quite traumatized, it has all these kind of openings for meaning, whether it's just a fairy tale, a classic fairy tale, or it was made in 1968. It was about a new world. It was about a sexual revolution, a revolution in society, and it was inevitably going to be echoing some conflicts of the time. And watching it now, it echoes some conflicts of now, and it kind of shows that this is an eternal battle between good and evil in a very simplistic terms. But it's such a beautiful film, and it was apparently very, very influential for Hungarian animation and just in general, European animation. And the director went on to make a bunch of other films that are all absolutely gorgeous. There's one he made called Farewell Little Island that I was thinking of picking, but it's actually so depressing and so affecting. It really made me cry when I watched it. So I mean, check it out if you want, but it's intense. This film is more digestible, I would say, less upsetting, but it's absolutely beautiful, and the animation style is so gorgeous. It's not just about the images, it's about the rhythm and the music. He uses all these beautiful pieces of classical music, starting with Vivaldi, that are famous, but the rhythm, they go so well with the images, and it brings this like purity to it. There's a sense of like directness and purity to the film that is absolutely beautiful. Another film I picked that's also from Hungary. I don't actually have ties to Hungary, but they make great films. It's called Merry Go Round by Zoltán Fabry. So this is actually a really, really famous film. You might actually have heard of it. You might have seen it. It's not actually that easy to see. To prepare for this, I tried looking for it, and I had to watch it on YouTube or something, which I do not recommend. The quality was awful, but it's such a gorgeous film as well. So I'm so glad that Klassiki was able to get it, because one big thing about this film is, again, the formal quality of it, the shots. It tells the story of a girl living in a poor Hungarian village in the 50s, not in the city, in a small town. And she is her dad is very domineering, and he is kind of agreed that she's going to marry some guy that she really does not like. Meanwhile, she's has her eyes on some other guy who's really nice. And of course they can't be together. And that's the essence of the story. So in that way, it sounds really banal and like, oh yeah, of course, back in the day, that stuff happened. And like, I know that stuff happened, like even in my family, I'm sure that happened, in the past, or even in your family, I don't know, it's just a long time ago. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't horrible, and that doesn't mean that people didn't suffer. And that's what this film shows in such a beautiful and modern way. Basically, the film stays with the female character the entire time. And so we feel with her everything that happens. It's not kind of like an overview of a society, really. It's more like, what if you were in that girl's position? And that's obviously horrible and awful, and not just awful, but just full of ups and downs. Like, she has moments of sheer euphoria on the merry-go-round, which is early in the film. There's a fair scene that's really famous and really beautiful, where she's on the merry-go-round, and it's like the happiest moment of her life, because it's fun to be on the merry-go-round, but also because it's she can forget about her problems, really. So she's kind of running away and in fantasy and dreaming, but always with her father bringing her down to earth violently. And so you stay with her all the time, and it's really intense. And but what I think is so modern about the movie is that you're not just with her, oh, she's suffering. You're with her in her state of mind, as I said. So she's fantasizing, she's dreaming, but also she's kind of passive a lot of the time with her father, because she has to survive, because he could strike her, he could be violent with her. And so you really come to understand this state of mind. And then you also see this guy who likes her, who actually wants to fight that system, and her reaction is to kind of freak out. She's panicked. She's like, she didn't know that was something that was possible, and she never even imagined doing it. but then as he kind of gets more and more, you know, ready to fight and, you know, declares her love to her, it kind of wakes up something in her. And that's not to say that this is like, oh, all thanks to this, you know, knight in shining armor. That's not really what it is. It's more about a woman refusing, you know, being helped by someone that she loves, but she has to make the choice herself to free herself from this and to, you know, to take that risk. It really, the film really emphasizes the risk of standing up for what you want and standing up for yourself. It's not just it's not like a classic story of like, you know, oh, third act conflict, she's gonna do it. No, it's like you really feel with her every moment that she's taking huge risks if she wants to be free. And yeah, it's such a beautiful film, romantic, but also in a way not really romantic. It's really about her, and it's so beautiful. And actually that brings me to the last film I wanted to talk about, which is I Even Met Happy Gypsies by Alexandra Petrovich from 67, I believe, and from Yugoslavia, this country that no longer exists. And actually the connection I find between these films is, yes, there's also again this dimension of, you know, people who are struggling and who have to make tough choices to survive, but also something that I found in several films actually that I've watched from the region, from the Balkans and from beyond, and actually you can still find it in the films of today coming out of Croatia and other countries like this, is the focus on women, and not just the focus on women, but like the very, I would say, almost militant desire to take them as, to portray them as characters who are just as important as the men, and that they all kind of coexist in this matrix of tensions and of oppression and of, you know, dynamics, and they're not just victims. Though of course they are victims, but they're not just victims, they're also people, you know, they're like, they shouldn't be victims. It's not like this is their place. This is kind of what the merry-go-round kind of shows, like you do not have to stay. It is not okay that you stay in this position of being a victim. Like you are a person, you should be out of that. And in a way, I would say I Even Met Happy Gypsies kind of does this, but the main character is not a woman, it's a man who is a Roma man who's extremely gorgeous. He's kind of like, he actually reminds me of Jean-Paul Belmondo, not to bring, you know, Western, you know, popular commercial terms into this chat, but he actually looks like Jean-Paul Belmondo. I mean, check it out. And he's an amazing actor, and he plays a man who's part of this Roma community, who's kind of struggling to survive, and he's actually, his job is to sell duck feathers, I think it's duck, and that's what he does. And apparently it's something that the Roma communities in Yugoslavia did a lot, probably, maybe they still do. And it's fascinating because it's, what's really great about this film is that you kind of, it starts from up close to these characters, and so you're watching it, you're staying with these people, and you don't realize, you know, necessarily what are all these pressures or all these very outside large-scale social pressures that make them live like this, which is a very difficult life, very painful and very intense life. And the film kind of doesn't, because the film starts so close to them and only kind of zooms out at the end, and at the end of the film there's this incredible realization that, oh, I've been staying with these people who are human beings, who are people, you know, who are, I can understand the choices they make, and they're not crazy, like everything they do makes sense. They are in these difficult circumstances. At the end of the film there's this zoom out effect, I believe intentional, where one of the characters goes to the city and realizes that in this whiter society they are at such a low level on the social scale. And at the end of the film, so you realize, oh my god, I've been watching like what the cliche, well not the cliche, but the story of what people say of Roma people, and the way that it can be reduced at the end of the film, the way it's reduced what their life is about to such a simple idea. You realize how violent that is and how their lives are so much richer because you've seen it. You've been there, you've been watching them, you've been watching their lives, their struggle, their happiness, everything that makes them who they are. And then at the film zooms out at the end, you kind of realize, oh, we're missing a lot of the picture when we use these, you know, these racist cliches and these these stupid simplifications about people, about minorities such as the Roma people in Yugoslavia. So it's again such a vivid film. Again, not to go back to the idea, but it really is. It's such a, you really are there with them, and it's so dynamic, and the cinematography is incredible, and it looks so beautiful, and you're so close to these characters. You kind of feel like they're present right now, and the restoration, by the way, is gorgeous. So you even feel more like you're with them at the moment, and they don't feel like strangers. They just feel like normal people, and it's such a beautiful film. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy this introduction, and yeah, thank you.